Okay, all right. So just to go through it, I'll go through the first few slides fairly quickly. I'm not sure how to move the next one. Oh, there we go. So just a few disclaimers at the start, actually, just that if we're talking about plant growth regulators, they are a minefield. And everyone's in a different situation with the varieties, seasons, how people set up their trees, how people set up their trees from the end of last season. So they can all affect the performance of the PGRs and what you expect of them. And sometimes there's some different results. So it's just a bit of not a blanket recommendations, but just some maybe food for thought when we get into GA a bit later on. Here we go. So plant growth regulators, what are they? They're really simple chemicals. They accelerate or retard the growth of the plant and or the fruit. So there's basically 5 classes of them. Mainly we deal with the cytokinins, the gibberellins. They're probably the 2 main classes that we deal with. And just a little bit on them, there's probably 2, a lot of these PGRs are produced naturally in the plant. So we're mimicking the hormones that the plant produces. And at other times we block the hormone the plant's producing. Mainly what we're looking at, I split it into 2 main areas that we're looking at. The tree effect with the Dormex, that'll all be out now regardless, coming up. Payback's probably out or coming out, gone out at the end of last season if anyone's using it. And the fruit effect with GA3, I'll probably use trade names a fair bit. So Progib, Cyclin, Retain have more of an effect on the fruit of the tree. More effect on the fruit than the tree, right? So just a quick summary on these ones, and I'll probably speak a bit on GA because that seems to be the where most questions come through. Regardless, it's mainly to do with the managing the growth of the tree. So yeah, it really reduces shoot growth. So it's pulling that early growth back, so you get a shortening of the internodes and the new shoot, suppressing that elongation of the new shoot. It's a tool to use. Pruning, as Anthony said, is probably the biggest tool that you can have in crop load regulation. Retain is another one that's used a fair bit for particular things. It really extends the life of the flower. So varieties like Regina, Cordia, that are a bit that have a very short time that the period that the flower is viable for, which Matt Whiting actually went through pretty well on his presentation. Generally, the flower sets in the second day that it's open. Regina Cordia, might be finished by the day 3 or 4. So it's a limited amount of time that those flowers have to set. So Retain just stops the ethylene. It blocks the ethylene production of in those flowers. So it makes the flowers and the ovule in those flowers last longer. So there's more potential for pollination. Cyclin, it's been come out of Tasmania, that idea, which is lifts the stigma off the end of the fruit at flowering time or straight after flowering, so that there's a smaller nose scar on the fruit. So there's less chance of cracking with that. And supplied, 1 or 2 applications of that 50 to 100% full bloom. But it's just to get that, reduce that size of that scar on the nose of the fruit. And it does work, that comes at a cost too. Progib. Progib GA3 is probably the most people I see have a secret recipe or a timing that they do it with. It's much like apple thinning. It's what works for certain people. Probably some of the things, and there's just a few things I'll share with about GA3 and on fruit, is there's an optimum GA rate for fruit firmness. There's a lot of high rates that are kicking around. I don't think they really add to any fruit firmness once you get over 20, 25 part per million. And I speak in part per million. I don't speak in rate per acre or rate per hectare like some of the labels and some of the other consultants do. The trees vary on size, different growing structures, so I still work in part per million. So there's an optimum rate for GA for fruit firmness, and there's no increase in fruit size at really high rates. But GA, there is a downside to that too, that it does delay the colour in fruit and can delay harvest in fruit. It can delay harvest in fruit 4 or 5 days, but at different timings, which I'll go into a bit later. You get very little delay in harvest. Fruit quality certainly can be increased. Pitting is reduced on many varieties, and post-harvest quality can hold up a lot longer with GA on the fruit. Return bloom may or may not be reduced, depending on the timing, on the rates that you do. There was a product on the market called Regulators that was GA3. Was put onto stone fruit during bud initiation to reduce the number of flower buds going into the following season. So there are actually less flowers, produced more leaf buds and less flowers. That's certainly being done on stone fruit. It's being done on cherries as well. It's something to look at on those precocious varieties that's overcrop each year. It's something to work with your own trees, in your own situation, in your own agronomist to work through that. Just some notes and comments on GA. What GA does is increase the size of the cells in the fruit. So cell division occurs really early in cherries. And half the cells are already formed at bloom time, at full bloom. Half the cells in the fruit are already formed. Another 2 to 3 weeks after that, the rest of the cells are formed. So once you get past 3 weeks after full bloom, pretty well all the cells that the fruit's going to have are going to be formed. And then it's really blowing up those cells to give it the size. Applying the GA at that translucent green size, which it's probably the industry's tending to do. I might be wrong there. I'd appreciate some comments there. And applying at that translucent green, just as it's going into that straw colour, it does delay harvest 4 or 5 days, somewhere there, depending on the temperatures after application. But it will give you the biggest increase in fruit size and firmness. Yeah. But you must hit the fruit. GA is not translocated, so hitting leaves won't do anything to the fruit. It won't move from the leaf to the fruit at all. If we're hitting the fruit, then we've got to get it into the fruit, so it needs slow drying conditions, for better uptake. So spraying of an evening, very early in the morning, to get that uptake will give you better performance. There's one of the comments about ProGib SG. It doesn't need a wetter. Whether you put a wetter in or not with other formulations, that's could help performance, but also means it could help the GA be taken up into the buds more, so reduces the flowering for next year. Application is a timing thing when, depending what you want the GA to do. If you want the GA to delay harvest, if you're not too concerned about that, you can go early, that translucent green stage. It's when the seed, you need to cut the fruit, so you can see when the seed is starting to go from that clear to a white seed inside, when it's just starting to develop there. That'll delay the fruit harvest. It will give you firmness, will increase size in the fruit as well, but it does delay harvest. going with a later application at blush, when it's a late straw or that early blush period, will increase the firmness of the fruit, but really not affect size or the maturity of the fruit as much. Certainly size won't be blown up as much, and the maturity won't be delayed. And just to go over that again, really, it's I think it's an important thing of when you're looking at markets and crop load, whether it's domestic market, trying to get it in before Christmas, or if you want to hold it till after New Year, or whatever the market is. When GA is applied, when the seed is fully formed, that's mean it's because the seed itself produces a lot of hormones for the fruit that the fruit reacts to. But when the seed is fully formed, it has a very little effect on the harvest and the fruit size, but it will give you infirmness. At straw, greatest effect on improving the fruit quality. This is for post-harvest, that it does hold up the fruit, the stem quality, and at that time does straw, or even before at that translucent green stage, will give you more of a better stem retention on fruit. Straw, we talk about straw, but really what is it? It's that timing is at the edge of this, end of the stage 2 and start of the stage 3. I think we're all aware that stone fruit has a 3 growth stages. Probably apologise for the slide, but it's a little bit rough. But you've got the stage 1, which is from full bloom to pit hardening or stone hardening. At stage 2, kind of through here, where fruit really doesn't grow much, but the seed inside actually develops. And you've got stage 3 here, where it really takes off, and the fruit size doubles from the start of stone hardening. 10 days after, the fruit will be double in size, and it just goes on up till harvest. So you've got that 3 stages of fruit growth. Probably just explaining it a bit more, and thanks to Byron Phillips from Wilbur Ellis that produced this. It's really gives an idea, though, of the different timings. But cutting the fruit does give you the best idea of what stage the fruit is up to in maturity. Got from this translucent green, where you can kind of almost see into the flesh of the fruit, will give the maximum size response. Up to the classic straw time, where it gets some delayed maturity, but not as much, but will still increase size and firmness. Or late blush, or that early blush, or very late straw will give you the firmness, but no size increase. And this is just to finish off with, it's just back to those 3 stages again of field division. I think when we're looking at that, those stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. I should have put this slide up before. It's actually a bit better. You get that early growth. It's cool. It's springtime. We get a slow growth. Coming up to then stage 2, where there's really no growth, and it's one of the few times where fruit really doesn't grow very much at all. This is in stone fruit generally. That's when the seed here is really developing. So all the energy is going into there. It's when you get a lot of shoot growth happening here as well, because the fruit's not growing. Then the start of stage 3, when we put the GA on, will give you that increase in fruit size. May delay the maturity if you go early, not so much a delay in maturity if you go later. It's really about all I have. There we go. Yeah, so that's really about all I have. But if any questions on PGRs, there's another area, I suppose, cytokinins and auxins and in the biostimulants is a whole another area for discussion sometime later. But they're also in that category, if you like. All right. Thanks, Tom. Thanks for the opportunity for the talk.
I appreciate your willingness to come on to be part of it. Thank you. We have had one question on the chat, which is probably the hot topic for when you're talking GA3. Do you have a preferred part per million rate that you would recommend?
Yeah, I'd go, I think between 20 and 30, and I suppose I'll go back a step, sorry. Whether it's a single application or a split application, if it's a split application and you've got a wide flowering or a long flowering period on the tree, you might be looking at a split application to pick them up. I'd probably go at around that 20 part per million. If it's a single application, probably that 25 to 30, somewhere there. Don't know if there's a big advantage. I really haven't seen a big advantage in going at much higher rates. The only advantage might be that you actually reduce the flowers for next season at a higher rate. You can do that probably at a different timing as well. Maybe after harvest is a safer time to do that.
Jump in here, Foxy. It's Barry Kerr from Sumitomo.
Hi, Barry. Yeah.
Yeah, look, just one point. Probably make sure you don't go over 40 parts per million in the season. So, if you're going 220s, or some guys will go 410s, but just don't get over that 40 parts per million per season, or you can run into return bloom issues, and sometimes they can be serious. So it's only a very small amount, but it is a very powerful little product. So more's not better in many cases. So, and the other one is that you can use a wetter with Progia, but make sure it is a non-ionic, and don't get trapped into using, penetrant. I've seen some awful results with guys use a penetrant rather than a non-ionic surfactant.
That's true. Yeah. Good. Thanks, Barry. Yeah.